Doubling down, President Donald Trump defends his decision to remove U.S. troops from Syria. We're at the White House. Fight for the unborn. Democratic presidential candidates are asked about abortion in a debate in the battleground state of Ohio. We have a report and reaction. Loud and clear. Protesters in Hong Kong shut down a speech by Chief Executive Carrie Lam. And Nationals treasure. We talk with the Catholic chaplain of a baseball team headed to the World Series. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, October 16th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. President Trump denounces Democrats as desperate. He says they launched an impeachment inquiry because they're afraid they're going to lose the 2020 election. The president also defends his decision to withdraw troops from northern Syria despite more backlash today. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. President Trump responded to questions on both topics today while hosting the president of Italy here at the White House. And he's blasting Democrats for their investigation here at home. Today at the White House, President Trump criticized Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and the impeachment inquiry.
I think that she's done this country a tremendous disservice. She's created a phony witch hunt, another one.
He also defended his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who has come under scrutiny in the investigation for his dealings with Ukraine.
Rudy Giuliani was seeking out corruption and what happens mostly in the 2016 election.
But President Trump spent most of his time today defending his decision to pull U.S. troops off the border of Syria.
We were supposed to be there for 30 days. We stayed for 10 years, and it's time for us to come home. We're not a policing agent.
The withdrawal has left Kurdish fighters previously backed by the U.S. under attack from Turkey.
The Kurds are very well protected, plus they know how to fight. And by the way, they're no angels, but they were with us. They are no angels.
The president says either Russia or Syria can support the Kurds, but it is no longer America's responsibility. As for the future of ISIS, the president is also relying on other countries in the region to prevent the terrorist group from re-emerging.
We're 7,000 miles away. So we're killing ISIS. We're 7,000 miles away. Russia's much closer. Iran is right there. Turkey is right there. They all hate ISIS.
President Trump is sending Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Turkey to try and convince the country to end its fighting with the Kurds in Syria. The two leave Washington tonight. Wyatt.
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. Democratic presidential candidates are defending their positions in favor of abortion. Last night marked the first time moderators in a debate asked the 2020 contenders about the topic. 12 leading Democrats weighed many other issues, including Syria, opioids, and health care. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi joins us with more on the life issue. Jason.
Wyatt, all of these Democratic candidates support taxpayer funds going to abortion. One candidate last night said she wanted to continue to allow federal funds to flow to Planned Parenthood. They also talked about protecting Roe v. Wade. This comes amid speculation that a conservative Supreme Court could one day reverse that abortion precedent. Democratic presidential candidates agree.
I support codifying Roe v. Wade. I would codify Roe v. Wade.
They want Congress to pass a law protecting abortion.
We codify Roe v. Wade.
The White House hopefuls.
I would also make sure that I appoint as president people who respect the precedent of Roe versus Wade.
Meet in Ohio. Ohio's governor this April signed the heartbeat bill. It bans abortions as soon as the baby's heartbeat is detected.
Reproductive rights are a constitutional right.
Candidates promise to fight states' pro-life laws.
The way, as President of the United States, I'm going to deal with this is, first of all, elevating it like we have with other national crises to a White House level position. And I will create the Office of Reproductive Freedom and Reproductive Rights in the White House and make sure that we begin to fight back on a systematic attempt that's gone on for decades to undermine Roe v. Wade.
California Senator Kamala Harris says as president, her Department of Justice will need to approve states' pro-life laws.
Women have been given the responsibility to perpetuate the human species. Our bodies were created to do that.
And it does not give any other person the right to tell a woman what to do with that body. It is her body, it is her right, it is her decision.
Pro-life leaders question what is right.
We understand that our most important right is the right to be born. And if you don't have that right, then no other rights matter. And so people need to think about that when they're advocating for women's rights. I hope what they think about is, yes, we have rights, and that right is to be born, the most fundamental right for any human person.
All of these Democratic candidates do support abortion, but one of the members on the stage last night, Representative Tulsi Gabbard, said she did support some restrictions. She said third trimester abortions should only be allowed to protect the mother's life or her health. She said she wants abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Wyatt?
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thanks, Jason. Joining us now for analysis of last night's debate is Philip Crowther, international affiliate reporter for the Associated Press. Philip, welcome back to the broadcast. Last night was the first time moderators asked about abortion. Why do you think it took so long to get to that issue, and should we expect abortion questions to be included in future debates?
You know, that's a very interesting question. I think there is a reason, of course, why these debates are happening in places like here in Westerville, right in the center of a battleground state like Ohio, especially in a battleground state like this one. The issue of abortion is particularly important. It brings mixed reactions. Of course, it divides the political spectrum, not necessarily across party lines between Republicans and Democrats. So it was only a matter of time before those questions would be asked. You also heard from the former Vice President Joe Biden on stage, giving another reason why maybe here in Ohio might have been the right time to bridge those questions for the first time, because he mentioned the two Planned Parenthood clinics had closed over recent weeks here in Ohio. That is another main reason. So we heard from almost all of the candidates, most of whom, certainly from Republicans' points of view, would have held pretty extreme views on abortion. That would certainly be the views of the president, for example, in the White House, but Republicans generally as well. Our first chance then to hear from all of those 12 candidates on stage on that very difficult issue that we do expect to come up again and again.
Last night, this was also the first debate since the impeachment investigation into President Trump began. How did the candidates address that impeachment issue?
Yeah, things have really changed, haven't they, since the last debate a month ago. Since then, we now know that all candidates, including those 12, a record number who were on stage yesterday here in Westerville, they all are for that impeachment inquiry into the president. They all said pretty clearly on stage that they do want the president to be impeached. So that has certainly changed, but didn't necessarily dominate the debate here in Ohio, despite what we might have expected. Here's another element that we thought might be really important in this debate. For the first chance, we thought foreign policy might be the dominating theme because of what happened over the last few days, because of that Turkish incursion into northeastern Syria facilitated by the departure of US troops from that same area. There were a lot of questions asked on that, but it certainly didn't dominate the debate. It did lead, though, to very forceful criticism of President Donald Trump by pretty much all candidates on stage, maybe with the notable exception of Representative Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii. Maybe the strongest attacks on President Trump coming from former Vice President Joe Biden, but also from Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend. He, of course, who has combat experience in Afghanistan.
Several moderate candidates went after Elizabeth Warren. Was it effective, and how did she handle it?
Well, you know, she did pretty well there. One conclusion that we can come away with from this debate is that Elizabeth Warren looked a little bit more like a front runner than she ever has. She is pretty much the joint front runner right now with former Vice President Joe Biden, and she seemed rather comfortable in that position, fending off attacks coming from all sides against her on her Medicare for All plan. Again, that is an attack that has come her way pretty much at every Democratic debate so far, but she is comfortable in this position, and it's maybe a sign of things to come over the next few months. Remember, this was only the 4th Democratic debate. There are 8 more to come, and we are expecting quite a few candidates to fall by the wayside in time for the next debate that will be held in Georgia next month. And after those 12 Democratic debates, well, that's only when the 2 candidates, the 2 nominees, face off with 4 further debates, including the one with the vice presidential candidate. Still a very, very long way to go, and that leading position that Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, seems to have right now, that could also still change quite a few times.
So many important issues that are brought up in this debate, ones we'll continue to follow. Philip Crowther, international affiliate reporter for the Associated Press, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The leaders of the two biggest countries in the European Union say a deal on Britain's exit from the group could come tomorrow.
Glauben an ein Abkommen, das zwischen der Europäischen Union und Großbritannien geschlossen werden kann.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel says officials are in, quote, the final sprint of negotiations. Merkel, who appeared in a news conference with French President Emmanuel Macron, also praised the UK negotiators for trying to have the deal done before the deadline at the end of the month. Hong Kong's leader, Carrie Lam, is forced to stop in the middle of a speech in Parliament after being interrupted over and over again by protesters and opposition lawmakers.
報告文本，呢一份屬於本屆政府任期。
Lam was laying out her policies moving forward in the former British territory, but was not able to finish her speech in the chamber. She left and then came back about 20 minutes later, only to be interrupted again. Her administration has faced backlash since June over an extradition bill that has snowballed into an anti-government, anti-police, and anti-Beijing movement. Pope Francis is challenging world leaders to take bolder action to make healthy food readily available for all. In a message for the United Nations World Food Day, the Holy Father says dietary and lifestyle changes are necessary to fix the problem of obesity in some areas and malnutrition in others. The Pope names 4 people to the group responsible for drafting the final document on the Synod for the Amazon. Those 4 members will meet over the next 2 weeks to put together all the recommendations bishops and lay experts have been discussing about the region. Before it's official, the final document will be voted on by Synod members on the second to last day of the meeting. And at the end of his day on the Synod yesterday, Pope Francis paid a surprise visit to the home of his former chief of security. Domenico Gianni stepped down earlier this week after a leak of information in a financial investigation. The Holy Father spent a good deal of time with Gianni, his wife, and his daughter. Gianni had worked for the Vatican for 20 years. Coming up, we speak to a religious sister honored by the U.S. Embassy to the Holy See, and a competition in Washington, D.C. with rare bipartisan support. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See highlights women at their second annual symposium titled Women on the Front Lines. Diplomats came together to hear from religious women who promote and advance education, health, and development in dangerous parts of the world. In March, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo presented 10 women with the International Women of Courage Award. It honors women who have demonstrated exceptional courage, strength, and leadership at great personal risk and sacrifice. One of the honorees was Sister Orla Treacy from the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, also known as the Sisters of Loreto. She's originally from Bray, Ireland, and joins us now from Rome. Sister Orla, welcome. I understand U.S. Ambassador Callista Gingrich was one of several speakers during the symposium today. You also gave a presentation about your work. Tell me a little bit about what you talked about.
Yes, it's lovely to be with you, Wyatt, and thank you very much for the invitation. The symposium today was about religious sisters working the frontiers. So for me, I was talking about my experience of working in South Sudan with the young women that I work with, and also with the issue of forced and early marriage that we deal with every day in our work.
And I remember, Sister Orla, we've talked with you on this program about your work there in South Sudan. Tell us, what inspired you to leave your community 11 years ago to go start an all-girls school in this war-torn nation?
As part of the Loreto Sisters, we had the invitation in 2006 to begin a new mission in South Sudan. It was a very clear mission to open a girls' boarding secondary school. South Sudan is the most illiterate country in the world. We only have about 1% of girls who are finishing secondary school. So the invitation as our sisters was to go and to begin a boarding secondary school there. I was privileged to be one of the sisters who went in the beginning. And since then, we've been able to develop a primary school and also a clinic to work with the women and children as well.
As you say, you've advocated for girls in South Sudan who are married prior to their 18th birthday, many who are in arranged marriages. Do you believe the Holy See, other organizations, countries around the world are listening to you? Are you confident that the challenges you've expressed, you presented over the years, are being addressed?
You know, as you say, the 52% of our 18-year-old girls are married. We did receive the invitation from the bishop of our diocese to come and begin this work with the young women. So the church is very much at grassroots. The church is very much working with the local people and trying to promote particularly the dignity of women. We are many religious sisters and missionaries from around the world working in South Sudan. And I think that the Pope has had that recent experience of where he kissed the leaders of South Sudan. That has had a huge impact for us. And we would very much feel the support of the Catholic Church in the work that we do in South Sudan.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo presented you with an award in March. He also participated in meetings in Rome earlier this month. How important is American leadership in solving problems like human trafficking or exploitation of women?
South Sudan is the newest country in the world. We became an independent country in 2011. And I think when you look at the history of the development of South Sudan, America had a huge part in the creation of that new nation. So it's a journey that America has been part of from the very beginning. For us as a school, getting recognized by the American authorities was very significant, not just for us as sisters, but for our students, that we could be recognized on the world stage as being women of courage. That has had a huge impact on our girls and our students. Very few girls get to go to secondary school, very few girls get to finish, and each one of our girls has to plough that road by themselves. They challenge the culture of their community and go on and be educated. So getting a recognition on a world stage is very, very significant for us.
Tell us what's up next for your work in South Sudan. Are there any other projects on the horizon?
I think when you work with young people, you can never be idle. Young people are active, they're ambitious, and they're always pushing for more. So our big achievement in the last 4 years is that our first graduates have now graduated from university, and they're now coming back to serve in their community. Some of those graduates are coming back to work with us. So the goal for us is that in the next 5 to 10 years, that more and more of our graduates will be able to occupy more key positions within South Sudan. We have a peace agreement at the moment. Our leaders are looking at a transitional government on the 12th of November. There are 35% of positions given to women, but we don't have enough educated women. 19% of women in South Sudan are educated. So the dream for us is to see our graduates, our young women, take their positions in society and become leaders within South Sudan and become the change that they want to see for their country.
And of course, we pray that God will continue to bless the work that you and all the other sisters do in South Sudan. I know a lot of our EWTN viewers have been praying for the country and for its future. Sister Orla Treacy from the Institute of the Blessed Virgin Mary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and lovely to be with you, Wyatt. Thank you for that.
Up next, Pope Francis reminds the faithful to be amazed by God's surprises. And an inside look at the Washington Nationals baseball team from its Catholic chaplain.
Abrirse a los demás con un estilo de vida cercano y fraterno.
Pope Francis says those who evangelize should rely on God and not themselves. At his weekly talk to pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father tells Christians to allow themselves to be amazed by God's surprises, because it is through creativity he makes himself known as Lord of all. And finally tonight, a sports story with proof that Hail Marys are not only for football. Last night, the Washington Nationals baseball team clinched a spot in the World Series, and it comes after a lot of prayer and blessings from the team's Catholic chaplain. Msgr Stephen Rossetti has been with the team for 10 years. In his role, he ministers to the players and members of the organization. This is the first time the Washington Nationals will appear in a World Series in franchise history. And Msgr Rossetti joins us now. In addition to his role as the team's Catholic chaplain, he is a research associate professor at the Catholic University of America. Msgr, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Wyatt. It's great to be with you.
Which days are you normally with the team? Tell us about a typical day when you're with them.
Well, especially, of course, on Sunday when I say Mass for those who are interested, staff, players, coaches. But also I mingle with the guys. I provide sacramental things. I bless. I just try to be present to them and encourage them, especially when things are not going well. I mean, I remember one story about years ago when they weren't doing well. I remember those early days, and they had lost 10 in a row. So when I walked into the locker room, and you could cut the gloom with a knife, it was so. And so one of the guys looked up and saw me and said, oh boy, do we need you. So they appreciate it. I think they appreciate seeing a Catholic priest, whether they're Catholic or not. I think they all seem to very much enjoy it.
How originally were you selected to be the Catholic chaplain?
It's one of those serendipitous things. I just happened to know the previous chaplain. He needed to be replaced. He said, I'm just too busy. And I said, well, pick me.
There you go. You were in for it.
Yeah. So it was very informal.
You had mentioned just some of your interactions with the players. Are many of them Catholic, Christians? What do they make it?
Yeah, I mean, there are Catholics, there are other denominations, but I would say all of them are just wonderful guys. I mean, I've been inspired by them as much as trying to inspire them. Mm-hmm. And there a lot of them are deeply faithful people. And every year we have Faith Day when several of the players witness their faith, and they often ask me for a blessing even if they're not Catholic.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful exchange. I mean, they appreciate the faith.
Monsignor, now that you've been doing this 10 years, is it rewarding for you to now see some of these players, some of these staff, the coaches who have been through some tough losses now going to the World Series?
It's very exciting. The place is electric. I mean, last night was just unbelievable. It was and I feel great for them because the guys have struggled. I mean, when they were 12 games below 500, everybody was ready to give it up. And their motto of stay in the fight, I think is good for all of us. I mean, all of us have tough times in our lives and when we go through difficult things. And there's a statement of hope. Mm-hmm. And I think on a spiritual level, all of us, at times, things can be dark. And so trust in the Lord. The Lord is walking with us. He's supporting us. And you might not win the baseball game, but God's gonna be with you.
And that's the most important thing. Before we let you go, Monsignor, any predictions for the World Series? Full disclosure, I'm from Houston. I'm a Houston Astros fan.
Well, I hope you guys come in second. But I would say this about that. I mean, who knows next week, who's going to win the World Series? But I would say this. The Nats are going to fight to the last out. I mean, they've showed us that. They're going to stay in the fight. They're hope-filled, gritted guys, and they're going to fight it.
And they just seem to be getting better and better because they swept the Cardinals in this last series.
This is the best baseball I've ever seen them play. Everyone and the whole team, it seems to be peaking at the right moment.
Okay, very good. Well, obviously, we'll be watching to see how all this plays out. It'll be exciting. Yeah. Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, Research Associate Professor at the Catholic University of America, and of course, the Catholic Chaplain for the Washington Nationals. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Wyatt.
And that concludes our newscast for tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.